Welcome to another episode of Clinic Success Secret, the podcast where we uncover the strategies and insights that drive clinic growth and elevate patient care. I'm your host, Tommaso Dwyer, founder of Clinic Success Partners. We are a medical digital marketing agency dedicated to helping clinics serve more patients and achieve the success that they deserve. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Desmond Ebanks, the founder and medical director of Alternity Healthcare. Dr. Ebanks has over 3 decades of experience in internal medicine and has made significant strides in age management and longevity medicine. Innovative concierge model of care focuses on maximizing performance through personalized health strategies. We'll be exploring his journey from traditional medicine to running a successful cash-based longevity and wellness practice, along with the valuable business insights that he's gained along the way. Welcome, Desmond.
Thanks, Thomas, for that wonderful introduction. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you here as well. We obviously have had a great conversation before, but for anyone listening, I'd love to bring it right back. Would you mind telling us a bit about your journey into how you got into where you're at today with your current business model, right from the start?
Right. Yeah. So I saw that in my training in internal medicine, when I looked ahead at what that was, I just felt like internists really didn't solve a lot of problems. They didn't really get people better. They more or less help people tread water until they slowly got tired and they drowned at the end. But they never actually reached in and got people out of the water, so to speak, to use that analogy. And I initially went into emergency medicine because I saw that that's where I could make an impact, and sometimes an immediate impact, life and death impact, in people's lives. But like with anything else, there are shortcomings there too. And one of them was that it was just, it was episodic. There was no follow up afterward. And oftentimes you would see, people come back over and over again for similar or related problems. And, without going into all the details, I spent a little time just in investigating, the types of things that were necessary to keep people well. And, I spent some time going to conferences to learn the types of things that I didn't learn in medical school, as far as, how you truly impact with nutrition, in physical activity. I visited, several centers that were focused on either age management or longevity or some, advanced wellness, to see how they were doing what they did. And, I then put those things together and, created a business for myself and opened up my practice and, got started that way.
Right. I love it. And then I suppose when getting started, it's a question I always ask the guests. What challenges did you encounter early on? We talked about this before, pricing, getting those first few clients. What do those initial challenges look like for you?
Well, I think overall, one of the biggest challenge is just the business aspects of running a business, and really realizing, that medicine is a business, right? And if you don't, focus on running the business part of your practice, you're not going to be there to do any of the good things that you want to do. And unfortunately, in a lot of medicine, a lot of doctors, feel that way, or we're taught that way, that is unseemly to think about, the money, right? But, you have the same expenses as any other business. So you have to learn how to manage those. So, figuring out, initially, what it would cost to run the business, since I had no business training, and understanding how long of a runway do you need to leave yourself with money so that your business can catch up with where you are, right? And I think we spoke about in previous conversation, I spent a lot of money to create a facility that I thought was necessary to deliver what I wanted to deliver in the beginning, without that consideration of, okay, well, how long of a runway is it going to be? All this money is laid out. and what's a reasonable time to think about, getting somebody in here. And I guess, it was sort of the mindset that, well, I think this is a good thing. Everybody should want it. So if I build it, they're going to come. Right. And, it took months to get my first patient. And, uh, that can be problematic if you don't have access to the funds, to allow you to, continue, or think about starting in an alternative way, on a smaller scale and then build it.
Perfect. And then I suppose when starting off, what were some of those initial business lessons that you learned, when starting, specifically around pricing and patient demographics?
Yes. So, again, now looking back on it, I mean, one of the key decisions to make is to decide, where in a given market, do you want to be, right? And what is it that you want to deliver? And because, irrespective of what area your business is in, there's a variety of price points, right? And you have to decide, if we take the two extremes, right? I mean, do you want to be a large volume, low cost practice, or do you want to be a small volume, higher price or higher cost practice? And, deciding what it is you want to deliver will inform, that decision in part for you. And once you have that in place, now you know who your customer is. And I guess that is, also one of the big lessons I learned. Initially, not all business is good business, right? There's some business that you should just not have because it doesn't fit into where you want to be and where you want to go.
I love that. I suppose would you mind telling us, 'cause we've talked about this before.
Yes.
What was that epiphany moment like for you when you decided maybe I'm not charging what I'm worth? Because I know it's a great little anecdote here, for anyone listening.
Right.
And, how did that impact the business when you did make that change?
Yeah. So, and I don't remember exactly when, but it was in the early years. I was introduced to a guy who ran a company, that, set up boards of directors for small businesses, right? And everybody that's on the board was responsible for giving advice to the other members. And so I was on one of these boards. And of course, when you start, you have to sort of present what you do. And I presented what I wanted to do and what I was doing and what my expectations were. And they asked me, well, what were you charging? When I told them I was charging, all the business people said, oh, well, you're not charging enough. That's why you're not getting the business, because what you claim to want to do, what you're advertising that you do, the people who want that would expect it to be at a higher price. And, that was really eye-opening for me. And it was scary at the same time because, I was not getting the business that I wanted at a lower price point. And I'm thinking, oh, what's going to happen when I raise my price? What happened when I raised my price is that I attracted the people who really wanted what I was offering at that price point.
I love that. And it is so scary to make that, to make that jump initially. We always assume if I charge 30%, 40%, 50% more, we're not going to get the volume. But very often sales actually increase in terms of volume. But also, as you said, you're actually working with the people that place the value, in the work that you do.
Correct.
Very often it's not the lack of access to services like yourself. There's a lot to be said for some cost, obviously, I think, when it comes to getting that buy-in from people. If people have made that financial investment in your services, they're much more likely to follow the protocol that you outline, in my experience anyways.
All right. And you used another word that's very key, and that's value, right? There's a difference between cost and value, right?
Yeah.
And look, in medicine, I'm not inventing a new device. I don't have a new lab test that no one else can get. I mean, everything that I'm doing, someone else can investigate. They can buy the equipment. They can, get the same labs. So the value is in how that is put together to impact the patient, right? So, that's where the pricing comes in, right? And people, in a concierge or direct pay situation, really people are looking at, okay, what is it that you're offering? And is it worth the money you're asking? They're making that value judgment. And once they see the value, they will pay it. And, I opened my practice 16 years ago, and, I have patients who have been with me 12, 15 years.
Love that. And then how would you describe, suppose, who would your dream demographic be in terms of people that use your services?
Well, my dream, obviously, it has to be someone who's got the financial means to invest in their health. Again, another maybe change of thought, when it's not just a cost; it really is an investment in something in the future, for the individuals. So, most of my patients are 50 and above. Although, as we did talk about, since COVID, I've been getting calls from younger and younger people, which is very interesting. But traditionally, it's been people over 50. Most of my patients are either business owners themselves, or they're some type of professional, lawyer, other physicians are patients, and some executives. But underlying all of that, because there are people in all of those categories who would not become my patient because they have not made the decision yet that they want to get their care in a way that's different than is traditionally, provided. Now, when I first started 16 years ago, that was a big deal. A lot of people didn't understand, the benefit or the value of paying for their care. So there was a lot of questions as well. Why don't you take insurance? Or if it's not covered by insurance, how good could it really be? Nowadays, that's not really much of the objection, because there are more and more people now who understand that, to get the best care for me as an individual, rather than good enough care for a population, I have to be willing to invest in myself. And there's a lot more thought about health span and longevity and what have you. So, that's less of a conversation now.
Yeah. Again, I'm biting my tongue to avoid nerding out about health span versus lifespan and squaring the curve, as we say. Because I know otherwise we'll be talking for 3 hours. But an interesting question for me on this is the demographic of people, and this could sway one or two ways. The demographic of people that you work with, Jeremy, they're high performers, entrepreneurs, they're lawyers. Do you find, and I think this is where pricing, as you said, comes in to act as a filter. Do you find there's an element of sort of a stubborn streak with the demographic that you work with in terms of changing their lifestyles? Or I suppose, do you basically find much pushback from your patients in actually making those core changes? Or do you have any strategies to help assist that process?
No, I don't. Because if they had that pushback, they probably wouldn't sign up to work with me.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not about me dictating to them. They've already made the decision that I want something better for myself. Big factor is there are a lot of people who say, I want to avoid what I see has happened to my parents, as they've gotten older. Yeah. That's huge. Or they knew a guy that was, quote unquote, the picture of health. He was always jogging. He was always doing this, the other thing. And then he suddenly dropped dead when he was 55, unexpectedly from a heart attack. And they said, oh, wow, if that could happen to him, maybe that could happen to me. So, now don't get me wrong. It's not as though my patients just come in like lambs and I'm the shepherd and they just follow what I tell them, and I don't want. What I want is to engage with people. Most of the people will come to me again because they've already made up their mind of the types of things that they want. They've already done some investigation. They come with questions. And really now the question when they come to me is it's not so much, why should I want this? It's that I do want it. I just want to see if you are really the guy who can deliver it for me. And so, setting up a program is working collaboratively with them, based on where they are and based on their goals. So it's not the same for everybody because everyone's goal is not the same. And, a big part of what I do which I love, is having the time to research and investigate things, because people will bring things to me and, there's a lot of stuff on the internet that is, less than reputable. And, we have to go through that and debunk some of those things, or, find studies and say, oh, well, this is why we should do this to get to that point. Now, I do have some people who come and say, well, I specifically want this peptide because I read about this peptide. And, we have to back off of that and say, okay, well, you know what? And obviously I don't say this to them, but it's not the deli line at Stop and Shop, right? You're not going in
Yeah,
asking
it's
or
make
the
a
other
mix.
thing, right? Correct. So it's really about, okay, well, you want that peptide to accomplish what, right? And we want to get to that. What is it you want to accomplish? Now we can look at how do we really get to where you want to be. It may involve that peptide. It may involve some other, and they have to understand that, yeah, all of these people are very intelligent. You can go get a study, you can read the study, but whatever reading you're doing is not making up for my 30 plus years of experience. Right.
Love that. Again, that's the reason why we hire professionals to do what they do best. Yeah.
Correct. And so, there are always, little anecdotes, and sometimes, people are amused by them. Some people I say, okay, well, what would happen if you go home tonight and your roof is leaking? Right? Are you just going to go to Home Depot, buy some shingles and put the ladder up there and go up there and hope that you know how to fix it? Or are you going to call somebody who knows what they're doing? Right? I mean, it really is that simple, right?
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think even the whole point that you're making about people, they might be, I don't know, maybe listen to a bit of Andrew Huberman or something. They hear about a peptide and they're like, this is what I need. And I'm sure you could counter this all the time. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I suppose is what I'm really getting at. And again, I'm speaking to the master builder who has all of the has all the tools. Which ones are there. But when I hear you say that, and I want to segue into something else, but it reminds me of a talk given by Steve Jobs. Like very often think of where he was basically on stage, and somebody said to him, there's a comparison here with the peptide side of things. He basically said to Steve about, the iPhone, and he said, why did you build it using a specific programming language? It'd be way better using X, Y, Z. And Steve took a pause, in this case, Steve is you. And you reflected and you said, what I find best is to start what the end user actually needs and wants. And then I work back to the technology. Because I found when you do the other way around, it never works out. And I think there's a very, very strong parallel there between what you do.
Right. And not to say that I feel that I am all knowing, right? No, okay. There have been times where, someone brings something to me from a podcast that I was unaware of. But then that's doing the research to say, oh, you know what, by the way, this actually may be a good thing, right? So it has to be, collaborative in that way. And another, key and related point is irrespective of what it is you have to offer or want to offer or think is the best thing in the world, you still have to address the desire of the patient. Within everything else, if someone comes to you and says, look, I want to achieve this one thing, and you say, well, yeah, that's great, but I got this great program for you. Right? Yeah. That's not going to work either. So you have to be able to incorporate, what it is, the goal of that individual, and be sure you're addressing that thing too.
It's actually such a great point. I think it's so universal. As I always say, I say way too much. The quality of your life is dictated by the quality of your relationships. And the more I'm in business, I find there's incredible consistencies across all areas of life. And with that being said, I mean, what you're talking about here is it's universal for everything. If we bring it back down to brass tacks, and I even think of running a marketing agency like we do, the number one reason clients leave agencies isn't because of lack of results. It's perceived indifference. They feel like the provider doesn't care about the client. And like you said, you can do the best job in the world, but patient or client walks out of your office feeling like you just belittle them. They're not going to come back, whether they feel 10 times better or not physically.
That actually brings to mind, a patient, a relatively recent patient. He's been just under a year. I mean, the guy, money is not the issue for this guy. He's got homes all over the world. He does, incredible stuff. And he has some things that in an ideal situation, I would say, you know what, you really need to stop that because the impact is going to be negative. And his position is, I'm 78 years old. I like doing that. And so I'm going to keep doing that. But within the context of that, I want you to help me achieve these things. Right. And so you can't be so arrogant to say that, well, that's not good for you. And so you have to stop that. All you can do is provide the advice and the information as to, you know what, that could be negatively impacting you. But in his mind, he says that,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing it because I like it.
If you're adamant that you're going to do it, let's work within those constraints. I think that's
Correct.
it's all, again, it's all about give and take and balance. To segue into something else, then. So
Yeah.
obviously trends with longevity medicine in general, I think a lot more people are taking this whole integrative, holistic approach where they're viewing everything from the ground up to, as you said, improve their wellness instead of just prolonging the bottom of the curve. How has the demand for longevity and age management services evolved, especially post-COVID?
Oh, well, yeah, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I mean, one of the biggest things that we noticed is younger and younger people, early 40s, even late 30s, are calling, and now they all don't necessarily have the financial means to, to work with me, individually, but it's just more and more people that are interested at an earlier, age and looking at, okay, well, what are the things I should be doing to change the trajectory of my aging, even at an earlier state, which it is kind of interesting, because within the context of the deplorable health of, people in the United States overall, it's kind of interesting that younger people are starting to, to look at that and want some interventions to improve their health and ideally their longevity. Now,
It's
yeah,
good
I'll
sign.
leave it. Right. I don't want to veer off right into another tangent. Yeah.
No, I agree. To be honest, my next question was going to be about that shift in demographics. And I think you've mentioned it. I suppose, as I always say, lukewarm is the most dangerous place you can be. And I think especially that demographic that you're referring to may see a lot of evidence around us, that maybe health is something that should be prioritized and they know something's not right. So I think it's a positive trend. I think it's sort of a counterculture against society, the societal push towards processed food and all that. So I think I think we're heading in the right direction in that front.
I would agree with you, and hopefully, certainly not to veer into politics too far, but just in the sense that if younger people are more engaged, then some of the things that really stand in the way of more people being healthy can maybe change. Like big food companies, and what a lot of people may or may not know is that a lot of the fast food, snack food, those companies are owned by big tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so their goal is just to make the food, addicting, and it has nothing to do, with health. So
Yeah. No,
hopefully
I agree.
change.
Yeah. I think there's a movement there. Bring it back into to other areas, I suppose, technology and exciting new developments, right? This is in your personal experience. How do you foresee technology impacting the accessibility and personalization of longevity medicine in the near future?
Oh, well, I think in a couple of different ways. One way is just as the science progresses and the availability of lab tests that can actually, quantify or objectify things so you can measure, because when you can measure it, you can impact it, you can track it. Right.
Yep.
When early on, in the creation of my business, the really only reasonable, measure of someone's biological age was telomere testing, right? And that even evolved. There were a couple of companies in the U.S. that would they would give you a report of the average telomere, right? Then we found a company in Spain that measured each individual telomere, so they could tell you the percentage of critically short telomeres. Which again, so that was a leap forward in that. Yeah. That was really an amazing development. But then epigenetics, now that has really become the big thing, and is almost pushing that direct telomere measurement aside, because through your epigenetics you can get an estimate that some studies have compared that is very comparable to actually measuring, and epigenetics just gives you a lot more information. So if anyone is familiar with the 9 hallmarks, which now I think some people even call them 11 hallmarks of aging, there's more and more of those hallmarks that can be directly measured, instead of indirectly measured and making an assumption. So that is certainly one way that technology is advancing. Now, the other way, I think, and it's like, I'm sure it's going to involve, not sure, it definitely is going to involve, artificial intelligence, right? And that is going to, in some testing, where artificial intelligence is going to be able to assess changes at degrees that the human eye cannot. And I'm thinking specifically, there's a cardiovascular test now. There's a company that using AI to look at cardiovascular imaging, and is able to track plaque and what have you, to a degree that would never be done by a human eye, right? And the other way technology, I think, is going to impact is gathering all of that data and really making associations that are just too vast for the human brain to make. And when those things can reliably be done in the background, that should be able to bring some of the costs down, because that manpower is not going to be necessary to be able to impact more people within the same time at a lower cost.
I love that. And for anybody listening, on the topic of epigenetics, we did do 2 previous podcast episodes with a man I'll definitely have to introduce you to, Boomer Anderson of Transcriptions. We talked about epigenetics in depth, and I think it's a really exciting field. On that topic, before we actually talk into the business side of things real quick, because I want to be respectful of your time. In terms of treatments that you're currently offering at Alternity Healthcare and strategies, are there any emerging trends that you're particularly excited about that you believe clinic owners should be aware of, so that they too can stay ahead of the curve in terms of treatments that are coming out?
So now you want me to give away the secret sauce?
Oh, whatever you can give up, whatever way you can, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah. Well, peptides have been, in the news, so they are really amazing, molecules. There's been a couple of bumps in the road where, now the FDA has, stepped in to limit how some of the peptides can be made or dispensed, or whether or not they can be compounded or even, offered for sale. And, whether that is in lockstep with, big pharma, making peptides, even though they don't call them, right. In all likelihood, that is the case. So seeing, where that, ends up, because the peptide molecules are very, very few to no side effects, and they really are able to get in, because they're signaling molecules, right? So they're able to get in and do signals, and really sometimes change some of the, the physiology, in the person in ways that medication can. So that, and the other thing that is a little touchy now is just various cellular therapies, right? I'm sure everybody's heard of stem cells, and it's not clear exactly where stem cell therapy is going to be, and there's still a prohibition from the FDA and a lot of stem cell and or exosome therapy, but I think both of those over time are going to turn out to be very significant therapy options.
Yeah, that's really exciting stuff. I suppose, first of all, Thanks so much for all of these. But quickly on the business side of things for you,
Yes.
we have to wrap things up. Uh, Marketing strategies, bringing in clients, and so on. Obviously, we have that seesaw action. We know how to actually help the patients. Getting them in the door is the next challenge. What marketing strategies have you found to be most effective for a high touch practice, a concierge practice like yourself?
Yes. Well, over the years, probably one of the best things that we did was hiring a PR person. And that person had the connections to get the information that we wanted out in in a way that I think a lot of people perceive as more genuine because it's not directly trying to sell, right? A lot of other marketing, people become very jaded, with and social media, man. Oof, you can't even get on social media without being bombarded with ads from everyone who's got the best thing ever, and they're the only one who has it. I've not found, that type of approach to be as effective for us. Um, but with the PR, it's not direct response. So, and, this is actually kind of funny. So the first uh, TV spot we got a PR person, they got me a TV spot. Actually was down in New York City. And, I remember, naively, I'll say more than arrogantly, calling my web person and saying, TV. So make sure the servers can handle, all songs, everything is going to be in. And, nothing. But
Yeah.
but it created a body of work that we found that oftentimes a year later, when someone calls, we say, well, why did you go? I saw you on TV and I saw you in the magazine. I saw you over here. And so now I'm calling because, seeing that body of work, I, made them feel that we were more legitimate. But it definitely was not that direct response.
That's so funny. The compounds over time. One thing I'd say on that, because we talked about this before, is suppose as an educational standpoint for yourself or any other clinic owners, online equivalents of these, obviously PR is very powerful. For anyone listening, depending on how you want to position your brand, in a case like yours, where it's particularly high ticket service and you don't want to diminish the value, a great strategy for digital PR, for lack of a better expression, is to optimize yourself for search.
Yeah.
So you're showing up at the top of the search results on Google, because as you said, people don't want to feel like they're being sold to, but if they type in, top wellness center, insert location here, and you go up top, you're retaining that brand value. You're letting, as you said, your body of work speak for itself, got your reviews on Google, and you're retaining that positioning that you fought so hard for without, as you said, having the direct response. So that's still a pointer I'd like to make people. Because as you say, what gets measured gets managed. And yeah.
Correct. And I think, a good corollary to that is your website, right? And as we talked about, I mean, we're due for a tune-up of the website, but if you get people to come to your website and it's not easy to navigate, or it's not representative of what it is you really want to provide, then you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot.
100%. It's a twofold thing. As I would say, there's 4 levers you can pull to grow any business. It's traffic, conversion, price, and churn.
Yes.
What we do personally for our businesses, we take care of traffic, conversion, and churn.
Yes.
And you take care of price. But what I'm getting at there is your website is a digital billboard, and you need to make sure it looks good, but also that you're not keeping it in the spare room in your house. It needs to be out there in front of people.
Right.
You can't have one without the other.
That's correct. That's correct.
But listen, that's great. I'm definitely aligned with you in terms of that. I think, as you said, I think when it comes to getting new patients, keeping your avatar in mind, as you said, they're high performing entrepreneurs or lawyers and so on. They don't want to feel sold to. They want to feel they're naturally going to be independent people that want to feel like they're making the decision themselves. They don't want to feel like they're being sold to. So again, I think it's a great point, PR, but I would also say that the search strategy is a big component too.
Yes. I would agree.
Yeah. So I suppose last question, we'll leave you at that before people can ask where they can find you. And if you were to give one bit of advice to a
Okay.
clinic owner, oh, if it ends up being 2 or 3, it's not the end of the world. But
Yeah.
what is one bit of advice, one in loose quotation marks, that you would give to a clinic owner who's considering transitioning to a cash-based or concierge model, something similar to yourself?
Yeah. Um, well, I tell them to reach out to me, and for a very large fee, I'll walk them through. No, I think it really is, taking the time to figure out what it is that you want to deliver, and avoid just grabbing the newest shiny object, and just because somebody down the block is making money, doing IV therapy, maybe that's not what you should be doing. Or you hear about, oh, this device, brings in a lot, but if it's not really going to fit in with what you want to do, you have to, leave those things aside and, find your own lane. You're not going to be able to do everything. Nobody does everything. And I guess that's the expression, right? You don't want to be a jack of all trades, and master
Master
of
of
none.
none. Exactly.
Correct. You want to figure out what it is you want to. Well, I guess in a practice like mine, if you're saying, well, I just want a volume practice and I will take all comers to do everything, that's also a decision. But that's a different practice.
The trade-off.
Correct.
Yeah. As I said, yeah. So your strategy is pick one vertical, become
Correct.
a master of that one, go very deep. And if you do end up stacking verticals, at least you've got your rock solid treatment that you are the go-to person in, and you don't dilute your focus. Would that be a fair way of saying that?
That would be a fair way. And some of the things you add on could be, corollaries of what your main focus is to help you, deliver better results, as opposed to something that is, completely not representative of your stated goals.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's for us personally with our own business, a massive pivot was me focused when I heard the sentence, focus on the who, not the how. What do your people actually need? Don't, as we said before, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. What did they need? Master your one and then build complementary things around that.
Yes.
Listen, this is great. I want to be respectful of your time, but Desmond, where can people find you?
Well, our website is alternityhealthcare.com. That's probably the best way to find us. I mean, you can give us a call, also 860-561-2294. Then the person answering the phone can direct you. And I guess I'll give you one additional pearl before I leave, about the phone. So, and so this is now, it's probably been about 6 or 7 years when we made this decision. And I'm sure most people who have ever gone to a medical office, you've experienced walking in and the person who's supposed to greet you doesn't even look at you. They're in the middle of doing something else and they may say, oh, wait a minute, or they may not. And again, once you decide what you want, I never wanted that to happen in my office. So we don't have a receptionist anymore. We got rid of our receptionist.
Wow.
And we use a virtual receptionist to answer the phone so that whenever someone comes in the door, they're greeted by someone who does not now have to worry about answering the phone. So now the virtual receptionists, they have various, protocols that they can follow and send links to people, do all of that. And my phone may ring 3 times in a day, when it's something that really needs to ring through. But that has been one of the best decisions, for the type of.
Wow. That's an absolute gem. So to clarify, the virtual receptionist is not the person answering the phone. They're the person answering the phone, but the person actually introducing and greeting people, it's a separate role altogether.
Correct.
It's a great bit of advice for people to consider. Yeah. I love that. Massive difference in the experience. Listen, Desmond, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to leave at this, but look forward to it again. Cheers.
Okay. That was good.